Welcome everyone to Buddha's Center. We're all so fortunate to be here, are we not? We have this basis that we can learn, how to get everything that we want from. And it's just such an amazing opportunity that we all have. And no matter where we are at in life, if things aren't going well, one thing that is for sure, our mind can feel better because it's not stuck in one position. We know that our mind is moving every moment. It's a impermanent phenomena that exists in time, and it's moving so quickly, and it's empty of inherent existence. So it's not stuck in a certain way, being a certain thing, because the kind of mind that we have is in the nature of clear light and unsullied, and all the stains that are with it right now don't need to be. They're not part of its nature. There's something that's an addition to that can be distilled from it, because the mind is just something that can clearly, reflect something and light it up and then know it. And whatever it is that comes before the mind in terms of dependent origination internally is what our experience is. And if we learn to become more intelligent about the way that our mind operates through kind of a cognitive development that we try to undertake, called the stages of the path to enlightenment, then we can evolve and mature. And eventually, the story goes that because our mind doesn't have the nature of not being perfect or being perfect, it can actually be transformed into perfection because of dependent origination. And all phenomena arise from causes. The causes are taught by the Tathagata. The cessation of causes as well are taught by the great seer. So that we see that through cause and effect, through creating more contents of our mind that are good than bad, our mind will work in a good way more of the time than a bad way. It's just simple math. If we look at how our mind is operating, how our mind comes into contact with things and then pays attention to them and discriminates them and feels a certain way about them, and then an intention to kind of run towards something or run away from something occurs, and then we act and react, through our speech, through our body, and so forth. So it's really about getting this mind under control that's been like a crazed elephant just running through villages and destroying stuff. As Shanti Davis says, our mind can be like that and can do a lot more damage than a crazed elephant. If we can get that thing under control little by little, then, the feeling that isn't good can be lessened, and the good feelings can be made bigger. So that's the name of the game. That's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to eventually remove all the things that make us suffer and make us have to be reborn again and again out of control in cyclic existence. We want to remove those things that are called the afflictive obstructions. But also the afflictive obstructions, if those are the only things that we remove, will leave stains kind of in our continuum that don't allow us to have reached our full potential. And by not reaching our full potential, we don't really achieve the full potential of others. And what I mean by that is, when we reach our full potential, we not only remove all of the suffering that we have by getting rid of what's called the afflictive obstructions, the afflictive obscurations, the karma, contaminated karmas and the afflictions and their seeds, and at the root kind of this self-grasping ignorance that gives rise to, everything wrong from there, basically, about the way that we think about things and react to things. So we have this kind of wrong idea that gives rise to a lot of other kind of wrong ideas. And when we get rid of it at its root, the wrong idea machine that gives rise to samsara and suffering is, unplugged forever, and will never be plugged back in again, because there's nothing to plug the samsara, nothing plugging the samsara machine back in. So samsara would have an end. Nirvana would not have an end once it began, for someone who's, removed the afflictive obstructions. And we call that, and if it's only that, we call that an abiding nirvana, that a hearer, a solitary realizer, practitioner, the Hinayana vehicle, sometimes called the individual liberation or solitary vehicle, is sometimes called Pali tradition. That type of practitioner, by getting rid of the self-grasping ignorance, when coupled with renunciation, goes on this mission to eradicate it even, at its root, and then can achieve that state. But as I said, it leaves behind residue that, if one hasn't followed the Mahayana path, which is a path of putting others' needs before your own, a path of wishing to become a Buddha for the sake of everyone, wishing to have your most potential kind of achieved, so that you can then show others how to achieve their highest potential. Then you still, if you don't kind of generate that mind alongside the wisdom, then you still have stains of that self-cherishing attitude that said, hey, I just want to be liberated for myself alone. I'm not disregarding everybody. I'm just being oblivious to everyone. And it leaves subtle stains around, subtle self-cherishing attitude, and the stains of those kind of obstructions to cognitive, the afflictive obstructions that kept you in cyclic existence. You're no longer in cyclic existence, but the stains there keep you from being a Buddha. Okay, so the self-cherishing attitude, the remnants of it, and the stains of the self-grasping ignorance that can't be gotten rid of without a bodhisattva bath, keep you from being the most reliable guide in the universe, with perfect wisdom, perfect love, perfect compassion, perfect power, perfect skillful means, and a perfect bliss that you only experience. You go from bliss to bliss to bliss to bliss to bliss. So your mind, my mind, has the potential to reach this perfect state that we hear about when we describe a Buddha's perfect state. Why? Because our mind has the potential to evolve into that perfect state based on the causes and conditions that give rise to a separation from not that perfect state. So we're so fortunate to have this information that's taught to us, and that we can meditate on, and that we can use analytical meditation on, and say, oh, does this make any sense? Does that make any sense? And then try to participate in this Dharma in our lives if it makes sense to us. And we have this unbelievably pure lineage of teachings passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni through the Nalanda tradition, through the Tibetan masters, that comes to us, that's really so valuable, and valuable because it meets the acid test. When you cut it and rub it, like the Buddha said, you will be able to arrive at, yes, this is gold. And what is gold for you within the Buddhist tradition might not be at this time gold for me, or vice versa. What's gold for me might not necessarily be gold for you, and etc. But there is a final gold that can be presented, called the Madhyamaka Prasangika view, and can be analyzed through our brains, our minds. We can take our mind and we can then analyze these things to see if they make sense, just like Buddha told us to. And that's what's incredible about this tradition, is that we come to these conclusions of discovery on our own. We have outlines that others give us, but these outlines, when we look at the way that the Buddha taught in provisional or figurative ways, and then he taught in definitive ways, in literal ways. And a lot of the figurative teachings were given to certain beings for whatever type of, in whatever, for certain beings who had different affinities for certain things. So we have to discover what works best for us, and then recognize that that discovery shouldn't be a stagnant discovery. The discovery should be something that once we find a view that we feel is accessible to us and makes sense, we should always be open-minded and willing to say, okay, well, here's another view. When we look at the tenet systems, Vaibhashika, Sautrantika, Chittamantra, and Madhyamaka, there's so many diverse views within there that's like a staircase to the final view of emptiness. And each of those views helps us at various levels, maybe in other lives, or in this life, we're right at the bottom of the staircase, or maybe we're in the middle of the staircase. But if we don't identify where we are on the staircase, we'll never get to the top. And we may think that we're at the top and not even be on the staircase at all. So I encourage all of you to really take advantage of this opportunity that we have. We give these teachings every week, and there's so many qualified teachers in this world that can present us with a pathway that, paths our minds, that will allow our minds to go from where we're at right now to that place where we are perfect Buddhas. And all the pathways that Buddha ever taught were for the purpose of bringing sentient beings eventually to the state of Buddhahood. And we need to make sure that we're covering all of our personal bases and all of the things that we need mentally to serve as basis for the higher realizations, if we wish to achieve the two things I talked about: freedom from suffering, which requires getting rid of the afflictive obstructions that are caused by self-grasping ignorance, and complete Buddhahood, omniscience, a perfect love, compassion, skillful means, wisdom, power, etc. That's requires us removing the obstructions to omniscience, those kind of stains that can only be gotten rid of as a bodhisattva on the 8th, 9th, and 10th bodhisattva ground. So we're always trying to refine our ways of being, our mind's ways of participating, our ways of our conscientiousness and our mindfulness and introspection. We're making sure that we're getting better habits around these things in our life, which will then allow us to produce better future results, because all results are dependent upon causes. And even if we're looking at it from a worldly perspective, if we could lessen our anger, lessen our attachment, lessen our pride, lessen our kind of crazy monkey minds, we'd be better off just as humans walking down the street, doing our human stuff. We would find that those around us and those other humans doing their human stuff would like to participate with us more, and we would have less kind of rubs with them. And then the rubs with them would allow us to have kind of an own personal discovery that would never be able to happen without having those kind of interactions. And that's what a spiritual practitioner tries to do, is makes use of every one of the interactions. So without further ado, let's imagine that we bring all sentient beings here to share this gift with them the way that we always do, remembering the meditations that we do on the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Maitreya Sangha, remembering the meditations that we do on the equalizing and exchanging self with others, that's passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Manjushri, Nagarjuna, and Shantideva, remembering kind of the epiphanies that we have, or the little bits of movement from contrived to not as contrived, to really kind of starting to get somewhere, to starting to feel it. We're trying to move through those stages that have to happen within our minds. So we're on a daily basis trying to use these meditations and trying to combine these meditations and trying to use the antidotes and the reasonings found in the Lojong text and found in Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, to make our minds evolve, So they go from this kind of tight place that's so self-cherishing and so self-grasping to a looser and looser and looser place, to a place where the mind can expand to all phenomena and to all sentient beings in order to really help them, because one's the most reliable guide in the universe, because of having gotten rid of the afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience. That is a process that has to be gone through and isn't an instantaneous process. Our deeds and wonderful activities will be spontaneous and happen like that when we're a Buddha, and we'll spontaneously help beings without having the thought, should I help them? We'll spontaneously help them because we have this mind that just flows to all beings in a way that says, I only want to help them, and I know exactly how because I'm omniscient. It's really a beautiful thought to think you could have such a mind that could spontaneously just flow like a magnet would flow to metal and attach to a being, and only to touch that being to be able to help them evolve to a state of perfection themselves. I mean, love is wanting beings to have happiness and the causes of happiness. If you could figure out what do I have to do for this being at this moment to get them to bliss, that's really love. Compassion is wanting beings to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering, wanting someone to never have to suffer again, and wanting everyone not to ever have to suffer again. That's really compassion. And here we are tonight learning how to make permanent bliss and freedom, permanent freedom from suffering happen. And it happens, when we look at the bliss part, by learning how to untighten this self-cherishing mind and make it smarter. Make it a mind that cherishes others, that knows that cherishing others is empty of inherent existence. It's really an amazing, and that's the pure way to cherish others. When we look at this idea of purity amongst ethics, when we look at Umagompa Rapsel, Lama Tsongkhapa's illuminating the intent, or illuminating the thought about Chandrakirti's supplement to the middle way, entrance to the middle way, commentary on Nagarjuna's Moya Madhyamika Karika, the supplement to the middle being Nagarjuna's root wisdom text. We find in there that pure ethics are ethics that recognize the emptiness of action, agent, and object. So we see that when we're doing all of these practices, when we're thinking of sentient beings and we're bringing them here and we're generating love and compassion and saying, may I be a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, and imagining we have the capacity to do what Buddhas do, and that's emanate to all sentient beings, speak in their languages, say exactly what they need to hear at that moment in order for them to evolve, say whatever it is they need to understand the truth of suchness, because we know that the Buddhas do not wash away negativities with water. They don't remove miseries with their hands. They can't transfer realizations. They come to teach the truth of suchness, and this is how beings are liberated. And so the Buddhas are always just around us at all times, subtly nudging us with ways to get us to the truth of suchness, which will eventually allow us to liberate our own minds based on the teachings. It's nothing that can just be given to us and make us spontaneously liberate. But once we're liberated, our minds will act spontaneously, because they won't be bound up by things like self-cherishing attitude, bound up by self-grasping ignorance, because we know when we're bound up by self-grasping ignorance, our minds become screwy right from there, and we start to think in ways that just don't make sense. Our conceptuality is so confused that we start to assign different things values, and assign things are good, things are bad, and then upon the way that we feel about these things, good or bad, we then react and become attached or have aversion, and then react more from even a physical or perspective, or with our body or with our mouth, and we say, please come here to me, or we say, go away, and things like that happen. And then if we look at the 12 links, we plant some karma in our mind that's going to give rise to something like it in the future, and won't go away if it's not purified. So knowing all of this, knowing that we're talking about the things that will make all of that stop, and that's all anybody wants, is for that to stop, and just for my mind to feel good, to always feel good, to not have all this physical and mental suffering all of the time. That's what everybody wants. Just imagine that you're giving the gift of that to all sentient beings, and you're bringing them here right now to share in this teaching. And while you're in the 7-point Vairocana posture, and just imagine that all of these sentient beings are arriving and getting into that 7-point Vairocana posture because they've observed you in it, and they've been inspired to do this because they can see that, I always say, like, a dog can tell people who don't like dogs and they don't go near them, but they can see that you have something that they want to be near. And the 7-point Vairocana posture is inspiring to them. So you're trying to have a real emotional experience when you do your practice. It shouldn't be stagnant. It shouldn't just be to get it through. Sometimes it has to be that. But the more you can lean into the emotion of your practice, the more it's going to mean something, and it'll make you want to do it tomorrow. And it'll make it make sense to keep doing it. It won't be something someone told you to do. It'll be something you tell yourself, wow, I can't wait to do this because it's really working. And this is the goal. So invite all sentient beings here to be your guest with this mind that's not biased, with this mind that has this love of wanting them to have happiness and this compassion of wanting them to be free from suffering. And you have this attitude that says, I'm going to do this myself. I'm going to free them. I'm going to take it upon myself, this task. And I must become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And you're imagining that you've done this, and you're leaving these railroad tracks in your mind to be able to do this, to say, this is what I want to do. You're imagining that you're doing it so that it becomes like you're engaging in the path, which is the result. It's like you're engaging in the result like a path, almost like Tantrayana, but not as deep. We're not trying to say, hey, now you're visualizing yourself in this exact form. I'm not saying self-generation. I'm saying just imagine if you were a being who could do all this and bring hell, hungry ghost, animal, human, demigods, and gods here and speak to them from your heart. And from your heart, meaning from love and compassion, that says, I've brought you here to learn how to never suffer again. I've brought you here to learn how to have bliss and how to be able to never not know how to help the people you love. Wow, what a gift. And this is the most valuable thing that we've ever been taught about. And think about how amazing it is that we're willing to share something of value with beings. We're so used to having things of value and being miserly in keeping them. We're handing all sentient beings the key to freedom from suffering door, and the key to the door that enters bliss forever. This is the kind of stakes that we're talking about. This isn't just hopeful practice, like, oh, I hope I win the lottery. This is something that can be logically thought about and presented, and we can discover ourselves through meditation and see the evolution of our own mind and be encouraged by our own mind. And we don't have to be encouraged by a rabbit's foot. We can initially be encouraged by seeing other holy beings, but sooner or later, we have to start to become holy beings. And we have this potential in our mind right now. All of us have love and compassion in our mind that can mature and become better and better and better and better to perfect. Don't ever sell yourself short and think, I can't do this, because you've thought in your life you could do so many things that people said that you couldn't do. Don't let this be one of them. Study enough that you convince yourself you can do it because of logic. Blind faith will only get you so far. And thank goodness, His Holiness, Khenser Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, Lama Tsongkhapa say, never be satisfied with partial instructions. The time to stop studying is when you have realized the truth and you're enlightened or liberated. Until then, if you still have attachment, you haven't figured out what to do about the self-grasping ignorance that gives rise to self-attachment and mine, an idea of mine. This is mine. So let's let loose that idea that this Dharma is mine, these teachings are mine, and share them. 8 hells, 8 hot hells, 8 cold hells, surrounding hells, hungry ghosts, animals in the sea, animals on the land, animals in the sky, humans, those friends that you have, bring them here. Those people who are neutral, those strangers that you see, you know some of their faces, bring them here. Those people you have difficult times with, bring them here. Know that they're your key to really knowing if you've gotten rid of your self-cherishing attitude. Bring them here and say, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Don't look up to those beings who seem to have everything material you could ever imagine. They can reach heightened states. We see people with billions of dollars. Well, there's gods and demigods and gods with more than that, still stuck in samsara. We shouldn't be envious of that. We should be able to see the suffering of suffering and the suffering of change equally distasteful. And contaminated happiness is only the suffering of change. To meditate on this and really understand what this means. We should be able to see somebody who has everything they could ever want materially and say, oh my gosh, they're suffering so immensely. We don't want to envy things like that because we could be perfect practitioners and envy things like that and end up in God's realms. This is why we stop the idea that that thing is, that sort of, life is good by doing meditations like this to say, hey, even the gods in the form and formless realms, they don't have it. I don't want that. I'm leaving a track in my mind to say, I don't want that. In my future life, if I start to have an idea that just concentration is all I need, may it be stopped by the meditation I'm doing right now that tells me I have to bring all of these beings here because they do not have freedom, and a lack of freedom is misery. No matter where you are, if you have pervasive compounded suffering, it's misery. But we have to know what suffering of suffering, suffering of change, and pervasive compounded suffering is to find out its misery. We must study. We bring the beings here. In the language of gods, nagas, and yakshas, in the language of humans, demons and humans too, and however many kinds of speech there may be, I shall proclaim the Dharma in the language of all. Now we imagine all sentient beings have assembled here, and we start to imagine that the merit field becomes kind of filing in, or all at once, however you normally do it. But I say we kind of file them in the space in front of us. We're in this 7-point Vairakana posture, trying to get our minds into the most calm space that we can get their minds into, to be able to visualize the merit field in the space in front of it and receive the most benefits possible we can, and blessings we can from the merit field, by having a mind that's in tune with the Dharma, a mind that's calmed down and saying, this is what I'm going to focus on now that I've gotten into the 7-point Vairakana posture and I brought sentient beings here. And now I'm going to bring that refuge field here for them all to gaze at and connect with, and for me to connect with, so that I can learn exactly what I need to do in the future, and they can learn exactly what they need to do in the future. And we can help each other to know exactly what we'll all need in the future, by connecting with those beings who know what we need. So imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni is in the space in front of you, so beautiful and radiant. We're so fortunate that 2,600 years ago, Buddha Shakyamuni came, taught this immaculate Dharma, came and taught the Four Noble Truths, and then came and taught the perfection of wisdom teachings, and then came and taught the wheel of differentiation, the commentary on his own teachings at the third turning of the wheel of Dharma. Wow, we're so fortunate. If we know all these 3 turnings, we know exactly how to practice. We know exactly what to abandon and what to take on. We know that we have Buddha nature and what that means. We have proliferating Buddha nature, and we have this natural Buddha nature, which is our mind's emptiness of inherent existence. The emptiness of the mind, which is the proliferating Buddha nature, is the natural Buddha nature. We're so fortunate to have these teachings, to be able to combine the second turning of the wheel of Dharma with the first turning of the wheel of Dharma and have it be complete. Combine it with the third turning of the wheel of Dharma and complete it, have it be complete, and then combine all three turnings of the wheel of Dharma to find a complete teaching that Shantideva put into the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life in those 10 chapters. We're so fortunate. We have this material. So imagine Buddha Shakyamuni, imagining His Holiness the Dalai Lama, imagining Khenser Geshe Wandak Rinpoche. We're so fortunate we connected with him. Geshe Lobsang Gompo Rinpoche, Demalocha Rinpoche, Khenser Lobsang Gyatso, imagining Geshe Dorje Damdu, imagining Umzala Geshe Aga, beings like Lama Zopa Rinpoche, Jeffrey Hopkins, Gen Nenden Jambel Drapala, all of these beings, Geshe-mala Tenzin Ladrin, all of these beings, anyone you consider an enlightened being, a holy being, imagine those lamas, these teachers, these gurus in the space in front of you. Now imagine the beings of the extensive deeds lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Maitreya Sangha and Maitreya Sangha and Basubandhu and Dignaga and Dharmakirti and Vimuktasena and Haribhadra and Shakyaprabha and Gunaprabha and Lama Salingpa and Lord Atisha and Drone Tompa, imagining the beings of the profound view lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Manjushri and Nagarjuna and Buddhapalita and Aryadeva and Chandrakirti and Shantideva and Bhagavega and Chandrarashita and Kamalashila, imagining Lama Salimpa and Drone Tompa. All these holy beings are right there in the space in front of you. They're our spiritual family. Imagine they're looking into your eyes with immense love and kindness, compassion. They've come to this world to teach us exactly what we need to know, to teach the truth of suchness. These beings have all, in their varying levels, when we look at the tenet system, taught us this staircase to emptiness, taught us about the ripening paths, taught us about the liberating paths, and both of these combined together will get us to go from where we're at now to Teata Om, Gate, Paragate, Parasangate, Bodhisoha. We are so fortunate that we have these texts in our world. The lineage of blessings passed down from Vajradhara to Saraha, Matripa to Lopa Narupa, Lotsawa Marpa, Jetsu Milarepa, Jay Gampopa, all these holy beings. Drone Tompa, imagine, is passing down the Lamrim lineage of the three old Kadampa lineages, and imagining the holy beings of Nyingma, imagining Padmasambhava and Longchenpa and Mipam, imagining all of these holy beings in the space in front of you, imagining Sakya tradition, Sakya Pandita and Sakya Randawa, imagining Sakya Chichen right here in the space in front of you, all these beings, the Kaju tradition, Jay Gampopa, imagining all the Karmapas and so forth, imagining the beings of the Galupa tradition, Lama Tsongkhapa, who took all the old Kadampa lineages and combined them into one concise practice and was able to take the lamp for the path to enlightenment and expand upon it so greatly, imagining Kirtup Jay and Jelsop Jay, and imagining Basuchuji Jetson and Jayan Sheba and Panchen Sonandrapa and Janjaropi Dorje and Gonchu Jibing Wampo, 7th Dalai Lama, Purbajok, Jitsumpa, all of these holy beings that have been so beneficial in our lives, whether we know it or not. If we've picked up the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, we've been affected by all of these holy beings. And if we've had teachings from various geshes and so forth, we've heard all of these holy beings' words trickled into our mind stream, and we're so fortunate. Even if we don't remember it all, it's leaving imprints in our mind to connect with it in the future, and maybe even in this life to have those aha moments that can only come from causes and conditions. Now imagining the beings of highest Yoga Tantra, action, performance Tantra, and action Tantra, all of the 35 Buddhas, all the protector beings, all in the space in front of you. Wow. Have a deep sigh of relief, because you have all of the holy enlightened beings here who love you so much, who come to this universe and all the universes to take care of sentient beings. They're all here like a warm blanket when it's cold, like the most comfortable thing you've ever felt. They've come to make you feel that way. And all sentient beings are here. And for once, there's a solution. These beings that we've loved more than anything else in previous lives and merely forgotten, who are suffering in ways we couldn't even imagine. And we don't even remember they were our loved ones. When we think about the people we love right now and the thought of them having a solution to the problem of suffering and blisslessness, let's exhale and smile at this idea that everyone that we've loved, and when we look at who that is, that's everyone, now has exactly what they need. Buddhas and Buddha's teaching, the truth of suchness. And with that in mind, we're going to recite the Heart Sutra, the explicit teaching, the definitive teaching, the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, where the definitive, definite teaching of the emptiness of inherent existence, ultimate truth, was taught. And implicitly, so explicitly, we have this incredible teaching on ultimate truth, definitive thought of the Buddha. And then implicitly, we have a teaching on all of those paths, the 5 paths that the Bodhisattva must go through of accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation, and no more learning, in order to remove all of the things that are in the way to his or her eventual perfect state of bliss, perfect state of love, perfect state of compassion, perfect state of care, perfect state of understanding reality at the ultimate truth, perfect state of understanding conventional truth, knowing everything and being so capable from a power perspective to emanate to every single sentient being in a way that they need, and being able to not only emanate to us ordinary bozos, but also go to Ogmin Pure Land and teach the Arya Bodhisattvas those special things that they need to hear to be able to fulfill the aspirations of the prayer of noble conduct, to be able to have billions of bodies emanate. The king of aspiration prayers may say that, may I be born in Ogmin to be able to finish the final things I need to fulfill this aspiration, to be able to emanate billions of bodies, to be able to have this Dharmakaya that then from this perfect caring for others and omniscience then sends bodies to bodhisattvas who are Aryas that need certain things, and sends bodies to ordinary people like me. Wow. Just the thought of that just sounds like something that doesn't sound real. That sounds like science fiction. But when we study this and we meditate on this, we aren't asked to blindly believe in science fiction. We're asked to keep an open mind and discover this scientific truth. And everything that we were believing, in some ways, because of our self-grasping ignorance, has been science fiction, has been fiction that we've acquired or just believed since beginningless time. There's something about everything that we believe that's wrong. Everything in the universe, every object of comprehension there is, including our own minds, we believe something about all of those objects that is science fiction, that is not true, that's made up by us, and then told to us by others, that reinforces what we, since beginningless time have been screwing up mentally and believing in. And when we believe that things, so what's this thing we've been screwing up? What's this thing about all the objects? The objects aren't the problem. It's the way that we think they exist from their own side, are able to hold themselves up without our mental designation, without our kind of object possessor. We feel like there's objects and then object possessors, consciousnesses. And we feel like things out there are casting their aspect on us. And then we're saying, oh, there's that thing over there. But what the Buddha came to say in the Heart Sutra is, we're making up that thing over there. It doesn't exist as a chair right inside its basis of designation. in its collection of parts. The Buddha came to tell us that. And it's this idea of chairness and of nice chair, that gives us a belief that we can then say, well, that's a nice chair and that's not a nice chair, because there's chairness of that chair over there and there's chairness of that chair over there. So it starts us from a place where we think, okay, that chair over there has inherent existence. So we believe something about the object chair over there that doesn't exist. So we start from there. We say it has an inherent existence. And if it has inherent existence, then that chair over there has some value. It's an antique chair. I think it's from the 1800s, actually. I don't really like antiques, but I have to protect it because of the fact that it might be valuable. So I do this inappropriate attention because from its own side, this chair exists for sure. So it's something that's worthy of my investigation about value in it. So then I say I'd go through all of this different stuff in my own mind, and I can even put objects, I can say I like them, but maybe they're not even valuable from a monetary aspect. So I'm not even assigning values to these things with my inappropriate attention that even makes sense most of the time. But I know a chair over there that I really don't like is worth some money, so I'm assigning a higher value to it than something I would sit in because it'd be comfortable. So now I have this inappropriate attention that believes that this chair inherently exists from its own side. I've discriminated as such, and now my discrimination is making me feel a certain way about it. I've discriminated as a chair that's an antique. Antiques have value. And now, if you say, hey, should we throw that out? I'm going to grab and say, no, we shouldn't throw that out and be attached to it. And if you then somebody comes in the house and starts to throw it away, I'm going to say, why are you throwing that thing away that inherently exists in an antique chair that's inherently valuable, that I don't even really like, but I like it so much I'm attached to it? We see this crazy stuff that our minds do. And then now I'm physically yelling at someone because they're taking my chair. And I'm saying in my mind, oh, that chair over there is really worth a lot of money, and I'm just sitting with it. When I look at it and walk by it, I think, oh, that chair over there is an antique from the 1800s. My grandmother used to put plastic over chairs like that because they were worth so much money. Ha, ha, ha. Wasn't she so attached? Wow. And then we can make all these other, like, be everyone else's discipline master on their minds and decide that, oh, wow, what you think is so important is silly. Because my world, all the things that I think that are so important aren't silly, and what you think silly. So this is the kind of out of control madness that our minds do. And then we don't feel good. We mentally feel bad. We mentally live in a disturbed state of mind. This starts out with a wrong idea and then just superimposes this idea of an inherent existence on everything, including ourselves. So the Heart Sutra helps us to loosen that and understand how to fix that, to understand that, yes, things exist, but they don't exist in the mode that we think that they do. We think that they exist from their own side, but they're actually empty of inherent existence. We think that they have an aspect that's the opposite of what they have. So when we come to understand that the object has within its entity not only this kind of conventional ability to be named as chair, but we also have within that entity an emptiness of a chair's inherent existence, an emptiness of a chair being able to stand on its own, stand from its own side, being able to hold itself up with any sort of chairness without just mere designation from a subject. So this is not something we're going to get with 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. This is something that, great geshes and yogis spend their whole life going over and over and over these formulas of the 7-point analysis of the chariot and the 4 essentials and so forth, and going through the 16 emptinesses, 20 emptinesses, and really trying to work it out and looking at dependent origination of causes and conditions, wholes and parts, and then finally to be able to arrive at mere designation, but only arriving at that through ultimate analysis and seeing that the mode of existence of the thing that's standing over there isn't the thing that way that you thought that it was. Then you can then understand what is being concealed. Because conventional truth is just concealed truth. It's concealing the object's emptiness. So you won't even know that really things you're just labeling and that's how they come into existence. until you negate the idea that they exist from their own side, and then try to find out, well, if they don't exist from their own side, from the object, but there's something that exists, where is it coming from? You have to land on subject. So all of this is so important. And the Heart Sutra, where it's saying no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, this is ultimate analysis that's engaged in. Form is emptiness, ultimate analysis. Emptiness also is in form. Emptiness also is form, conventional truth. So we see these two sides of one coin, the ultimate truth and conventional truth, and each object has within it both of these truths. The object, what show the conventional truth of the thing over there? Chair. What is the ultimate truth of the chair? Emptiness of chair. And what kind of emptiness? Emptiness of inherent existence of chair. Because if it was, if we were just saying that, the Madhyamaka Prasangika view is just things are empty of themselves, and that just means they don't exist. They're empty of, the object of negation is something very specific, and that's inherent existence. So those are a lot of words, and I just appreciate being able to even say them, being able to say that things don't exist from their own side, right within the object. They aren't established by way of their own character, right in the object. They aren't established by defining characteristics. It's not because we can define them that we can say they inherently exist as this or that. So there's so many different ways that we can look at, they aren't one, that chair isn't one with its parts, separate from its parts. It's not the basis of the parts. The parts aren't the basis of it. It's not the possessor of the parts. It's not the shape of the parts. It's not the collection of parts. We can find out how to engage in ultimate analysis on things and then come to a conclusion that Buddha came to in the second turning of the wheel of Dharma. So I hope that makes sense. And all the while, in order to get to that emptiness, we have to have a clean enough mind with ethics that can concentrate, and then our mind get calm enough to concentrate on emptiness enough to be able to see and have the experience of exactly what we've been meditating on. So Lama Tsongkhapa says that the experience of realizing emptiness directly by a yogic direct perceiver, the emptiness you directly perceive is the same emptiness you've been meditating on through the whole time of conceptuality. There's not some new thing you discover. It's you discover the thing you've only inferred up until then when you see emptiness directly. So we need to do a whole lot of inferring using signs and reasoning to prove that things are empty of inherent existence because they dependently originate. The subject, chair, is empty of inherent existence because it dependently originates. It's not inherently existent. It's not intrinsically existent by being one, intrinsically one with its parts, or intrinsically different than its parts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So these are the things that we are going to do when we engage in ultimate analysis. But when we engage in conventional analysis, we should be able to still posit chair to exist while being able to say that within the entity of chair, the conventional truth of chair, we can see within that same entity the emptiness of inherent existence of chair, but being able to see those are two different isolates. So ngopu chi dopatade, ngo chi dopatade, as we say in Tibetan. And it's a big topic that you start to learn in the very beginning of learning the collected topics, ngo chi dopatade, and it becomes the most important thing you can imagine, when you have to understand emptiness. You see, these little kids, debating, Dopangutsen, like going through all of these things about isolates and same entity, different isolate. And you come to find out that these collected topics that you're learning when you're a child in the monastery become the key to Madhyamaka Prasangika, to understanding how Lama Tsongkhapa could possibly say that when you see things arise, you should be able to see a lack of inherent existence. And when you see a lack of inherent existence, you should see a dependent arising. And when you can see karma and effects still working, that's when you know you've got what this emptiness of inherent existence is. And Nagarjuna says, with emptiness, everything's possible. Without emptiness, nothing's possible. And the lower schools, Sautrantika and so forth, say, if you say things, phenomena and so forth, cause and effect stuff are empty, then it makes them not work. So their reason for things not, phenomena not all being empty of inherent existence in the lower schools is funny, because they say that things have to truly exist for them to work. And Nagarjuna says they can't work if they inherently exist. Very interesting logic we have to come to the conclusion of. And if you study more and more and more, and you work on the ripening paths that help get rid of the rocks that are in the way of you getting to a more and more subtle understanding of emptiness, if you can get rid of the non-virtuous activities, the 3 non-virtues of the body, 4 non-virtues of the speech, and 3 non-virtues of the mind, and you can start to learn to love others and put others' needs before your own, the rocks kind of in the pathway to get to seeing emptiness, and then more rocks in the pathway to get to Bodhisoha, the path of no more learning, or removed to the point where you get rid of the ngudri and shiji. You get rid of the afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience by going through the various bodhisattva grounds. And we begin to get rid of the ngudri, the afflictive obstructions, when we see emptiness directly, and we are on the, land on the first bodhisattva ground and get rid of the acquired afflictions. And then we're on the first bodhisattva ground at the path of meditation and begin to get rid of the more and more subtle levels of the innate afflictions, to the point where we get rid of them. And then on the 8th, 9th, and 10th bodhisattva ground, we get rid of the obstructions to omniscience, this shiji, and then we become the most reliable guides in the universe. So when we look at the Heart Sutra mantra, and then I'll move on, Teatom Gati Gati Paragati Parasangati Bodhisoha, we need to think of this in terms of the maturation of our own minds. Om being Auma, body, speech, mind, has the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha is pure. My body, speech, and mind is not pure. In order to purify it, I need to go through Gate, path of accumulation, Gate, path of preparation, Paragate, path of seeing, Parasangate, path of meditation, to get to Bodhisoha. So we're thinking about this evolution, but recognizing that the path of accumulation is empty of inherent existence. The path of preparation is empty of inherent existence. The mind on the path of accumulation is empty of inherent existence. The activities you're doing for others as a bodhisattva are empty of inherent existence, and the others you're doing the activities for are empty of inherent existence. So this is what we keep in mind, and this is why the Heart Sutra combines the conventional truth of the paths and so forth, and the ultimate truth, the emptiness of inherent existence of the paths and so forth, which combined make liberating and ripening paths, which combine method and wisdom, which combine the collection of exalted wisdom and collection of merit that we need in order to become a Buddha. Wow, we have this whole path in front of us, and we've been taught so clearly by such qualified beings that shame on us if we don't practice. It's our fault. We have no one to blame if we're not practicing but ourselves. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard. Once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha monks and a great gathering of the Sangha Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One heard the Samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Brajamaharapita, saw in this way, saw the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form. Emptiness no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics, there is no birth and no cessation, there is no impurity, no purity, there is no decrease, no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no eye, dhatu, no mind, dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas. No mind conscious, dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance, up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the 3 times by means of Prajaparamita fully awakened to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering, should be known as truth, since there is no deception. The Prajaparamita mantra is said in this way: Teata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhisoha. Thus Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train the profound Prajaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son, honorable family, thus it is. One should practice, thus it is, O son, honorable family, thus it is. One should practice a profound Prajaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoice and praise the words of the Blessed One. Gala jebe ne jo damba ne ngushe du ju nga yi de do jen ju ba ba lama yi bu shin zi ne sun kan jo so la sha se lo aga samara ja shandara samara be aga samara ja shandara aga samara ja Aga samara chasandara samara ebe de ata on gate gate parasangate budiso papa concha samji kai de medoji shel lobodoji mepodoji shewa doji dragi baji medubishi tanji shedding goria zoagerendo daji jeje wada medo ne bejan andra wada and mojo jin bonzon joji daji de jandan da de lejo. Now make a mandala offering as request for teaching. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready. A shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Sanje Jananza Janan La Janja Badu Dani Jazuji Dagi Juji Bezonanji Jola Benji Sanje Juba Jo Sanje Jananza Janan La Janja Badu Dani Jazuji Dagi Juji Bezonanji Jola Benji Sanje Juba Jo Sanje Jananza Janan La Janja Badu Dani Jazuji Dagi Juji Bezonanji Jola Benji Sanje Juba Jo Gangi tutse nye zone dawa danche bambe chi dambe juni donze be gotan de la shatse lo namo guru be namo buddhaya namo dharmaya namo sangaya. Lama la jasu chiyo sanje la jasu chiyo chu la jasu chiyo gendun la jasu chiyo. Okay. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here tonight to allow me to talk about, this incredible teaching we call the Lam Rim. We've looked at so many incredible Lam Rim texts, and we have the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment in English. We have the medium stages of the path to enlightenment in English. We have the abbreviated stages of the path to enlightenment in English. We have the liberation of the palm of your hand, Nanju Lajang, in English. We have smaller Lam Rims written by Lam Tsongkhapa. We're so fortunate to have the 5th Dalai Lama's Lam Rim. We have so many incredible texts, and at the root we find Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, and an umbrella over that of Maitreya Zamisama Alamkara. So I feel like so fortunate to be able to discuss this with you. So let's move right to that text. We've been working on the source of all my good, which falls into the category of a very, very short style of Lam Rim, only 14 stanzas, but we find everything encompassed within this. And we've been going over just that entrance into the teachings we're, shared in common with beings of small capacity, the small scope teachings, the Jipu Chongo Dan Tongo Lanji Rimba we've been talking about. And so we first, when we look at Pabunka Rinpoche's outline on the source of all my good, we see there's the 4 categories of finding a teacher, then what to do with when you found a teacher, aspiration, since to not have obstacles and to meet spiritual friends, and then an aspiration to always meet with perfect lamas and complete the stages in the stages and grounds to be able to achieve the state of Vajradhara ourselves. So we see these four categories in the source of all my good, and we've kind of moseyed through them. We got to calm, abiding, shamatha, and then I said, let's go back and make sure we have a real foundation that we're going to need in ethics and so forth, to be able to even consider or dream about having shamatha. So we started with this: the source of all my good is my kind Lama, my Lord. Bless me first to see that taking myself to him in the proper way is the very root of the path, and grant me then to serve and follow him with all my strength and reverence. So we see this as reliance upon a teacher. We must have a teacher that's the right kind of teacher if we want to progress spiritually. We're not looking for somebody who's mediocre. We're looking for somebody who's really skilled, somebody who practices what they do, somebody who knows how to ripen people and practices those things. We're looking for someone who has those 10 qualities found in the Mahayana Sutra Alamkara by Lord Maitreya, somebody who has the qualities mentioned in the Lamrim Chemo that one needs to have. So we've gone over that quite a bit. So you should study what those qualities are and find teachers like that. Then it says, bless me to perceive the excellent life of leisure I found just this once is ever so hard to find and ever so valuable. Grant me then to wish and never stop to wish that I could take its essence night and day. So we know that we have this human life of leisure. We have this basis. We know that a life of leisure is one that we can practice religion from. We can practice spirituality from. We have that basis. We have teachers in our world that are teaching us. And it's so difficult to have this basis. It's difficult because of all of the examples that show us how difficult this human basis is, like the turtle popping its head through the yolk floating in the ocean we find in Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, quoting scripture. And we find it's so difficult with the examples of all the atoms in the world. We are always comparing to, the lower realms of existence, and the chances of us going there versus atoms between fingers, which are the chances of us having a good rebirth. And we learned that in Aryadeva's 400 verses that most beings are involved in non-virtue and ignoble things. Therefore, most beings go to the lower realms of cyclic existence. So, we have this life that's hard to get, that takes an extreme amount of ethics and 6 perfections and stainless aspirations to have gotten. And unfortunately, it will perish. That's the problem with it. We have this basis that is so valuable, and we can do so much incredible stuff with, and we can make our minds never have to feel bad again, and can make our minds always only have bliss. And what would be taking the essence of this life? It would be doing the things that cause us never to suffer again and only experience bliss. And because this life is impermanent, learning about its impermanence motivates us to then want to practice so that we get the best that we can get, because it's all we're trying to do day and night, but just doing it in a wrong way from delusion, as Chandrakirti says in Uma Gombarapsa, illuminating the intent, that everything's coming from delusion. So just a mess happens from there. Nagarjuna says that ceasing of karma and afflictions is nirvana. Karma and afflictions arise from conceptuality, the kind of inappropriate attention that comes arise from elaboration, self-grasping ignorance, emptiness, elaboration cease into emptiness. So if we get rid of the self-grasping ignorance, we get rid of the self-grasping ignorance, which is dazin. We get rid of that, then we get rid of the soshin maimbi yeche, which is the inappropriate attention. And if we can get rid of that, we can get rid of the coarse afflictions, the nyomo rapa. And if we can get rid of that, then we can get rid of the contaminated karmas, the sache le. And if we get rid of that, we can get rid of cyclic existence, korwa pong. So we see the root is through understanding. And if we wanted to, take its essence night and day, we'd, of this life, we'd figure out how to stop samsara, how to stop our blissless states. My body and the life in it are fleeting as the bubbles in the sea froth of a wave. Bless me first thus to recall the death that will destroy me soon. As I just spoke, we're going to die. We have this thing that's so valuable. Let's use it for something valuable while we have it. Pretty obvious. I think a child could figure that out. I have this thing, let me use it while I can for something good. But we like to complicate things and make things so difficult. Help me find sure knowledge that after I've died, the things I've done, white or black, and what those deeds will bring to me, follow always close behind a certain my shadow. Grant then ever to be careful to stop the slightest wrongs of the many wrongs that we do, and try to carry out instead each and every good that the many that we may. And from the Vinaya Sutra, what did the Buddha say? Abandon evil, engage in perfect virtuous practices, subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. So here it says, abandon evil, stop the slightest wrongs of the many wrongs we do, engage in perfect virtue, try to carry out instead each and every good of the many that we may. Where is that going to start from? That's going to start from our mind being, conscientious enough to see, hey, are we abandoning our evil? Going through our day, paying attention to what we're doing, abandoning evil, not abandoning evil, engaging in perfect virtues, not engaging in perfect virtues. We're being conscientious about that. And then this is our mind, that's seeing, what are we doing? And then there's a spy in there going, are we doing what we said we're supposed to be doing? And mindfulness is what we said we're supposed to be doing. We told our minds we're going to abandon the 10 non-virtuous activities, for instance. Okay, what are we doing? And the spy in our mind is seeing, while we're at a coarser level being conscientious, paying attention to what we're doing, the spy in our mind is seeing if what we're doing is what we told ourselves to do. And if we're not, mindfulness brings back our behavior to where it's supposed to be. And if we aren't paying attention to our minds, and we aren't getting better and better at having a spy in our mind watching what we're doing, and we aren't getting better and better about being conscientious about actually paying attention at course level to what's going on, we're not just, sometimes we can things can take over. You start just eating, you know what I mean? And you're not even paying any attention. You're just shoving your face with something. Sometimes it happens to me with ice cream. I don't even know what's even happening in the moment. Some addictive principle in my mind takes over, and I'm just like, don't even conscientiously know what I'm doing. Forget a spy seeing if I'm attached or mindfulness knowing that I'm supposed to not be finding things that don't have value so valuable. This is what it's about. We walk around with this wound, Shantideva says. It's our mind is so wounded and ready at any moment to have things happen within it, like anger, that will cause us in future to have so much suffering. And if we had a wound perhaps on our arm and we were in a bustling crowd, we would do everything we could to protect that wound, to make sure that it didn't get rubbed. But why don't we do the same thing with our minds in a bustling crowd, to make sure that if somebody kind of pisses us off, we don't then take the next step and yell at them or punch them? Why don't we, when a disturbing emotion, as in the 8 verses on mind training says, Geshe Langri Tamba's Lojong text, when a disturbing emotion arises endangering myself and others, may I firmly face and avert it. My yelling and punching could hurt myself and others. And my anger, just if it's even just secretly in my own mind, is hurting me. And by me being able to have conscientiousness and mindfulness and introspection, I can see what that mind's doing and whether or not it's causing me and you danger. And I'll never notice it if I'm not watching it. And I'll never watch it if I'm not learning what to watch for, and I'm not calming my mind down enough to watch. So this is what it's all about, guarding this mind like a wound when we're around others, in terms of what we're going to say, what we're going to act out on, because they're not going to notice our minds. But when we're alone, and when we're not acting out because we've subdued our mind enough to know we don't want to go to jail or have a lawsuit. That's easier. It's a lot easier not to act out physically or verbally, with our body or verbally. But that mind, we only know when we're alone, we only know what's going on in there. And we've got to be willing to watch it, to see if that thing at any moment that could be irritated to the point of causing us immense future suffering is starting to be rubbed or not. Is my mind starting to rev up with inappropriate attention? What if we could get it to the point where we saw that revving up? What if we could get it to the point where we saw, okay, yeah, I really love this thing. I found there's so much value in that. Give me that. What if we could say, okay, I just ran for something that doesn't have as much value as it should. Let me ease off a second. Wow, if we could guard our minds in that way at subtler and subtler and subtler levels, it's so obvious when we think about it and we're honest with ourselves, how this mirror of the Dharma could make our minds evolve. So what is it that we need to do? What do we need to abstain from? So I thought I'd read from Nagarjuna. So it says, having analyzed well, this is in the high status and definite goodness chapter. So what is high status and definite goodness? High status is high rebirth, we can say, in the higher realms of cyclic existence. But Lama Tsongkhapa also says that high status, we can also say the body's beautiful body is a high status body. So when we look at doing things to achieve high status, all of these behaviors to achieve high status, know that these are also banking up when combined with emptiness and purified. These virtues become uncontaminated by emptiness and become causes for the form body of the Buddha. And it says that the, generosity, ethics, patience, and effort become these kind of causes of the form body of the Buddha. And we see how these activities not only produce, we're looking at the small scope right now and trying to abandon rebirth in the lower realms. That's the point of the teaching shared in common with beings of small capacity, or teachings for beings of small capacity, is to first develop a renunciation for the lower realms of cyclic existence. And then once you kind of have that renunciation, you don't want to be born in the lower realms. Here's how you don't be born in the lower realms. You engage in behaviors that will make it so you're not born in the lower realms, and you make your mind accessible enough so that at the time of death, you have some control to be able to know what kind of mental state you're going to need to be able to be ejected out of your body into one that can be working to do Dharma again, and eventually into a body that will work for the Dharma for the sake of all sentient beings in the form of Buddha's emanations. Wow. Having analyzed well all deeds of, okay, so high status, we can say loosely is the higher realms of cyclic existence, but understand the highest status you can get of a body wouldn't be in cyclic existence. And then definite goodness, but high status is usually referring to the higher realms. But Tsongkhapa said, I read today, said something so unique that I thought I'd share it with you. Go look it up. Definite goodness is referring to two things: liberation of the Pali type liberation, the Hinayana liberation, an abiding nirvana, and then the liberation of a Buddha, a non-abiding nirvana, Buddhahood. So enlightenment, we can even say, is of two types: the abiding nirvana and non-abiding nirvana. It's fine. So here, this section's on high status. How do you get this high status? And then I guess you could say the definite goodness of the Buddha's body too. So having analyzed well all deeds of body, speech, and mind, those who realize what benefits self and others and always perform, these are wise people. So be wise, as Geshe Dorje Damdu says, wisely kind to yourself. Don't just be kind thinking, oh, let me have self-gratification. Be wisely kind to yourself and go for the gusto, go for the perfection, go for the no more suffering ever again, perfect bliss and all that good stuff. Don't go for suppression. Those who realize what benefits self and others and always perform, these are wise. What are these? Now we're going to get into the 16 behaviors for high status, and so forth. So they're called 16 practices for high status when we look at the outline, Joseph J's outline, I believe it's his outline on Nagarjuna's precious garland. Yeah, we're so fortunate to have these texts. So not killing, not stealing, and not committing adultery. It says forsaking the mates of others. This is Jeffrey Hopkins' translation here. So these are the three. So we look at the 10 non-virtues. There's 3 non-virtues of the body, 4 non-virtues of the speech, and 3 non-virtues of the mind. And then we can add 6 other kinds of practices that then make for a total of 16. But the first 10 are the 10 non-virtues, the ethics that abandon the 10 non-virtues. So the first 3 of the body are not killing, stealing, or adultery. So that's 3. Now there are 4 of the speech: refraining from completely from false. So that means refraining from lying. So that's 1. Refraining from divisive speech, saying things that make people who are incompatible, or people who are incompatible more incompatible. Divisive speech, that's 2. Harsh words, saying something harsh to someone that disturbs their mind, that makes them feel bad. Harsh words, 3. And senseless speech, gossip, basically anything that isn't useful to becoming enlightened. That's a tough one. So this is 4 of the speech, and then 3 of the mind, which of course the mind is always the hardest thing to stop, because we can just say no and stop. Don't say it. Don't do that with your body, but don't think it. That takes mental training. That takes really every day getting on a cushion, trying to calm our minds down, trying to work with our cognitive levels of mind with the 7-point cause and effect, and equalizing and exchanging self with others, working with our mind to recognize our own suffering, to realize the 8 sufferings, the 6 sufferings, the 3 sufferings that we find in the, when we look at the first noble truth, and Buddha stated that this is the superior truth of suffering. The Buddha pointed out everything that's wrong with all of our lives that we could have within cyclic existence. And if we know what that is, it encourages us to want to get out and not be baited by the suffering of change. It's our minds that start to want to change, and it's our minds, the intention, that gives rise to, when we look at how do we start to act out, it starts at our mind having an intention to yell, having an intention to hit. So if we can get our minds clean enough to not have that intention, then we don't have to worry about whether we're going to hit or yell, because we don't have that intention. But the funny thing is, we think we're doing so good. We must know what it says in Lama Tsongkhapa's Illuminating the Intent, that the pure ethics of abandoning the 10 non-virtuous activities doesn't really even happen till the second bodhisattva ground. Once we've seen emptiness again, and we're on the second bodhisattva ground, then at that point, we're able to say that we have this kind of perfection, this perfect way of acting even at the subtle level in relation to the abandonment of the 10 non-virtuous activities, because we don't even notice ways of our mind that are concordant with non-virtuous activities. We don't even notice them. It's things that that when we look at, try to abandon every form of negativity, we're looking at abandoning the most subtle levels of negativity. So here, when we look at the 3 non-virtues of the mind, we're talking about covetousness, thinking, oh, what they have, I should have. They shouldn't have it. Harmful intent. Oh, I hope something bad happens to them. I'm going to hurt them. Or a wrong view, believing something that exists doesn't exist, believing karma and its results don't exist. And we can even expand that into, believing that the lack of inherent existence doesn't exist, because the lack of inherent existence is a phenomenon that exists. Things inherently existing is non-existent. So we can look at all of the things in our mind that are screwed up and see that they've all got to be fixed. And the screwiness of our mind gives rise to the screwiness of our body and our speech. So then it says, these are those 10. So the ethics of abandoning those 10 are called the ethics of engaging in the 10 virtuous activities. The abandonment of the 10 non-virtues is called the ethics of abandoning the 10 non-virtues. So those are the 10 virtuous deeds. Abandoning the 10 non-virtuous deeds actively is a virtue. It's not just not doing it. It's an active kind of engagement that it becomes that makes it so powerful that second nature kicks in, and you see something run out in front of your car and you swerve, not because you don't want to crash, because you don't want the being running across the road to suffer. And you've abandoned harm. And ethics is abandoning harm and the causes of such harm when we look at the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment. So you naturally swerve, not to not crash, but to not harm. Wow. So then there's 6 more added. Not drinking intoxicants. The story that Buddha tells that drinking intoxicants, you get drunk, and then you're going to engage in all the other non-virtues. You're going to make a mess with your mouth, and you're going to make a mess with your body. And we do make a lot of problems with our mouth and with our body without alcohol. And so, I mean, I can engage in non-virtue without alcohol. Imagine how badly I can act if I add alcohol. So we know that every moment we're trying to act and engage in perfect virtues and abandon non-virtues. So we don't want to add something to our life that will make us engage in more non-virtue. It's not because we say, hey, don't have a good time. We're boring. We're boring people. Don't drink. No, it's because if you drink, then you're going to create more causes for suffering. And you're saying you're trying to have a good time, you said. If you want to have a good time, don't do things that make you not have a good time. A good livelihood, non-harming, respectful giving, honoring those who are honorable, worthy of honor, leaving in your mind, honorable is honorable. I want to be honored. I want to be honorable, and that's the only way I'm honored. Wow, that's the only good honor. The best way to praise the Buddha is to praise the Buddha for the teaching on dependent origination. That's the way to really be honored. Honor those who are teaching those sorts of things. And love and practice, in brief, is that. So I think that's probably enough time spent tonight, but I wanted to talk about a little bit about what is abandoning evil, what's engaging in perfect virtues, and how do you what do you mean subdue your mind thoroughly? Well, it would need to be subdued thoroughly for you to engage in perfect virtues, because a perfected virtue can only be done by a Buddha. And your mind not subdued can't even get to a place where you have a hinayana, here is solitary realizer, nirvana abiding. Can't even get to a place where you'd have a good rebirth to be able to then practice to be able to have an abiding nirvana and eventually be able to have a non-abiding nirvana. And hopefully we're all working efficiently to try to go right for non-abiding nirvana, to the state of Buddhahood, instead of getting caught in kind of longer routes that could tack on 40 countless eons instead of having to only wait 3 countless eons, or practicing Tantrayana if we have the right foundation of Bodhicitta and the wisdom realizing emptiness that's coupled with this concentration. It can shorten it even still. But all that's just talk. It's a dream. No one's going to give it to us. No, we can't go out and act like jerks and then say, oh, because I know some lamas. Oh, I go hang around teachers. I know high lamas, and that somehow is going to make me pure. It's a joke. It's not true. What's going to make you pure is if you practice every single day without fault. Every day you practice this stuff. And when you screw up at the end of the day, you say, I screwed up and I don't want to act like this. And in the morning, you set your motivation and say, I even dreamed about screwing up. I'm not going to screw up like I did yesterday. And this is how. I'm going to guard my mind like it's a wound in my arm. And I'm walking through a market and I don't want it to get harmed. And thank you so much, Umzala Geshe Aga. for teaching me, daily Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, with that incredibly beautiful commentary by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. It has such a profound effect. If you really know the Lam Rinpoche, and then you read Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, you'll be able to see the whole thing there. So it's amazing. Han, could you come in and plug something in for me? I think the computer's going to die. So hopefully Lori will be in to plug that in. And I'll conclude the teaching with that. And I want to just say thank you so much for attending. And let's do the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. Let me see. Oh, thank you so much for coming to plug me in. I just need this plugged into there. I'm already in the wall. This right here, I don't think I plugged in. And if it is plugged in, oh, then that's not plugged in. So with that being said, the fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas, I'm sorry, I dedicate whatever virtues I've collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losandrapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. And again, whenever you're doing your practices, always imagine the merit field and imagining all the sentient beings. And from Satya Konga Nimpo's parting from the four attachments, if you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. Any mistakes that I've made, I apologize. I openly confess them. I can't think of any that I made, but I may have out of ignorance, and may they be purified by Vajrasattva. Om Benza Sattva Samaya Mani Balaya Benza Sattva Zeno Vajra Dita Me Vazu Gai Me Vazu Gai Me Vanu Me Vazu Vaziri Me Braja Sava Kamzu Me Gidam Jian Guru Ma Bhagavan Sarvata Kata Benza Ma Me Moka Benza Baba Ma Samaya Sapa Ahum Ve. May we all be protected by Paul and Lama. May the Dharma be protected by Paul and Lama. Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Rama Jinja Kalarachamo Rama Vachadacha Tunjo Rudo Rudo Hongjo Hong. Okay. And we'll dedicate all this merit to us becoming Buddhas as quickly as possible. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri, and likewise Samanta Bhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the three times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. A long life prayer for His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Chen Rezig in our world, the wish-fulfilling jewel in our world, in that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains. You are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara, Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. And may we make supplications to Geshe Lobsang Gompo Rinpoche to please come back and teach us, to help clarify the Dharma. He was so good to help me to learn that key to start to get into the understanding of logic and reasoning, to be able to barely be able to read this, but read it enough so that it has such an effect on my mind. And prayer and supplication to Nanjo Khensa Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, who's inseparable from Aryatara, and I make prostrations covering as many atoms on the ground as possible to his pure body, speech, and mind, and enlightened activities, offering drinking water, bathing water, flowers, incense, candles, scented water, food, music, everything in the universe wonderful offered to Khensa Geshe Wandak, who came to this world, who came to us like Atisha, who went to Tibet to illuminate this lamp, to show us the stages of the path for persons of three capacities, the nectar of the Dharma, of the extensive deeds lineage and the profound view lineage entered our ears. It was so incredible. And you told us, though, that all of your teachers passed away and understood how sad we'd be, and knew that this was going to affect us, and knew that all composite things are impermanent, all contaminated things are the nature of suffering, all phenomena are the nature of emptiness and selflessness, transcending sorrow is peace. You begged us to not be satisfied with partial instructions, because the Buddhas do not wash away the negativities of beings, nor do they remove miseries by their hands. Their spiritual realizations are not transferred. there's by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated, and we are not prepared to go alone on this journey. Khenser Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, please appear to us in whatever form you may choose to in order to help ripen us. May you stay in our hearts, on our crowns, and may all sentient beings finally realize who you are by realizing renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness. Thank you so much to our kind lamas who give us the chance to be free and to get rid of this awful enemy that's within us that causes us to suffer over and over and over again. We don't see it as an enemy, this self-grasping attitude and self-cherishing attitude. We see it as our only friend, and we need to banish the one to blame for everything, as Geshe Chikawa says in the 7-point thought transformation. Thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate you. I hope your mind stays virtuous in as many moments as possible, because the more virtuous moments that we put together, the more collections we'll have that'll be needed to remove the rocks from the path that gets us to the direct realization of emptiness